everyone. Hello and welcome, and this is our second half of Google Classroom. We're going to dive deeper now into the Google Classroom classwork or assignments inside of Google Classroom. I'm going to share my screen real fast, and right before we jump in, and I know you guys online have just heard this, but I want to reiterate for everybody who watches this later, that as we think about how life is right now, we're trying to plan these educational opportunities for our kiddos. We're trying to think through manageable expectations, and again, that's defined by your school district. What I'm talking about right now is some guidance around best practices, and I want everybody to feel very confident, and I'm really sincere when I say this. You are a good teacher. We will make it through this. When you think about what is enrichment or educational opportunities, what is this going to look like? Continue to think like a teacher. When we're presenting a lesson, we know that there's some sort of input, that there's some sort of a reading, a video, maybe it's an online interaction, a Zoom connect in the moment, maybe it's online, maybe that reading is offline. But we need some input. And then we need, as I recommend strongly, that there's some sort of a check for understanding. When I first started talking about the flipped classroom, maybe 8 years ago, I got a lot of questions about how do I know that the kids actually watched the video? And including some sort of a check for understanding to gauge comprehension, as well as hold kids accountable for actually having done what you've asked them to do. Including a quick question is a good way to do that. I want to show you how to do that inside of Google Classroom. So let's do it. I'm going to click share, and now you're looking at my screen once more. And so here we are inside of our Google Classroom, and we're looking at the classwork spot, which is where we would start adding our content, right? We come up to create, and we've already looked at adding topics. Topics are great tools for organizing what is happening. My recommendation is to organize topics by weeks. If you want to organize them by content or by learning objectives, that's great too. I think that'd be fine. And organizing it by a learning objective, I think that'd be wonderful. And because maybe it does take more than a week. You can always come back in here and say rename and say week of 3:30 through 5:30, right? I mean, I don't know, right? Who knows what's going to happen? But the point being, I do recommend that you use your topics. You create a topic to help you organize the content. So let's come back and think. So if we're going to have some input, right? That means we need some sort of a task that students are going to learn something new. All right. So let's create an input assignment. I want students to, I'm gonna put in a question. All right, so the question here is, I don't know, give me a topic, somebody. Give me a topic, what are we learning? Anybody?
Underground Railroad.
Underground Railroad. Okay, so we got the Underground Railroad. And of course, we all do Google searches and we love Wikipedia, right? The answer is no to that one, right? Okay, but here's an example, right? All right, so then I'd look through here, and then I want to add this. I'm creating the comprehension check right now. And so I don't know, when was the Underground Railroad formed? Okay, how about that? So we'll come back over here and say, when was the Underground Railroad formed? Good. I have a couple options. I can do short answer or I can do multiple choice. So I can say 1792. I can say 1999, one of my favorite years, right? 2020, good. And notice that I can't assign a correct response here. I can't assign a correct response here. I can give it points, or I can say this is ungraded if you don't want this question to be graded. Remembering we're talking about a question right now, right? But now the instructions would be open this article, or maybe this is watch this video and answer the question. Good. If I wanted to add a link, I could add a link. I can add the link right here, or I could add a link right here. Great. And now here's my Wikipedia spot. Good. This is asking me what class am I sending this to? So once again, we saw with the announcements, I can create one thing inside of coursework and share it to multiple classes if I want. I can also specify students if I desire to specify students, or leave it for everybody. And I can tell it what topic to go to. I'm actually going to leave it outside of the topic. I can say that students can see the class summary. Remember that Google Classroom calls a question. It's more like a poll. It's more like a poll. And so you can have the students see the responses or not, that's up to you, but this is that quick comprehension check. And so right now we're looking at a multiple choice. Maybe you want it to be a short answer question, for example. That would be a different way. Maybe identify, so read the article, identify one thing that surprised you, one thing that, I don't know, summarize what was the main idea, and then tell me one thing that surprised you in the article. That might be a good quick comprehension check. Great, I'll say ask. And now it went way up here at the top. So Cindy asked just a moment ago, how easy is it to move content around? It's pretty easy to move content around. I don't have to click on those dots and move up or move down. I can simply drag that content around. And so that's how I would do it. So we have our input as well as our process activity. It's that quick reading, it's that quick video, maybe it's a teacher interaction with Zoom, but we're thinking something quick, right? Remembering that current expectations across our districts are somewhere in the range, somewhere around, and I'm seeing a couple elementary people online. In the elementary, I think we're looking more at 30 to 45 minutes per content area. In the middle school classroom, we're looking at somewhere around about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour of time per week per class. We're not talking about business as usual, right? So we're trying to think through how can we organize our content inside of Google Classroom. Potentially, we've got our input now. Now let's get a practice activity. So let's create an assignment, for example. Let's create an assignment. And so then this will be railroad practice. And so I want students, so with Google Classroom assignments, I can pull a document from my Google Drive. This is actually pretty cool. So I could have, for that same reading, I could have a notes page, for example, a notes page, a skeleton notes page inside of a Google document that asks some more detailed questions potentially. And now this is cool. I can say I've added a file from Google Docs. What do I want Google to do with it? Do I want this to be shared with all students at the view only level? That means they can't comment, they cannot edit, they can only see the document? Or do I want them to be able to edit? But remember, we're talking about all of your kids editing one document. There's some contexts where maybe that's appropriate, but in this experience, I want a practice activity, right? I want them to think a little bit deeper about what they've just read. So maybe I want to make a copy of my Google Doc for each individual kid. So of course, I want some good instructions up here that tell you what I want you to do with whatever it is I'm sharing. And now coming over to the right-hand side, this should look similar to what we just did with our question. Do you want it to be graded or ungraded? You can have it be worth 5 points. If you want it to be worth 5 points, you can have it be worth however many points you would like it to be worth. If you desire, you can also add a rubric, which would allow you to click, 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 click in terms of how the students did. Or you can then, or when you do this with your students, and we'll see it in just a second, when you do this, you can assign the grade yourself inside the grade book. I want to show you what that looks like in just a second. All right, I can assign a due date. So just remember, I have heard from every one of our districts that we are going to be very, very flexible in our due dates, right? We can assign a due date, right? But maybe you don't even want to do that. So good, I'm gonna press assign. It's gonna think for just a moment. Let's look back over at what our student is seeing. So here is that student student view, and you'll notice this is from before I started creating things in our classwork. And it's telling me right up here at the top that the stream has been updated. So let's refresh the page to see the updated stream. So you'll notice right here, it's telling me that a new question has been added. And when I click on that as a student, it takes me right into it, right? So it says, read this thing. Good. There's a link to it there. We also inserted the link there. Your students could have a class conversation. I mean, potentially that's part of your directions. Read the article and post a response, or watch the video and post a response. And also I can answer the question. Oops, turn in. Good. Great. The private comments are where students could write something specifically to you. It's now telling me that the student, have turned this in. Good. Let's come back and look at what it looks like from the teacher side. I'm going to come back to my stream, and it says that when I click on this thing, that it's showing me the results of the survey, right? The question. It's telling me that one student picked that the Underground Railroad was formed in 2020, presumably to self-quarantine. and then we can also see the student comments. Good. I'm going to come back to the question. Here is where I would see the class comments, right here on the question, as opposed to the student answers. We said this was ungraded, so it's not giving me the option to grade it. But I'm going to come back to our student view, and remembering that right now we're thinking more in line of practice, right? The practice activity. What are students doing to reinforce these new skills or information? So for the practice activity, maybe in this example, we've had them fill out this skeleton notes document. So let's look at that from the student perspective. We're going to open up our skeleton notes document. So it says, here's your work. It made a copy for me. I'll open it up. You'll notice this account, the title of the account, the name on the account is ESU5 student. That's the name. So your students would have Nick Ziegler or Becky Holtz or Jolene Bartels, and then whatever the title of that original document was. And then they'd be able to fill in your skeleton notes, and they'd be able to come down here and do whatever it is you wanted them to do. And of course, you would not give students a 3-page document, right? We're thinking manageable expectations. And when I'm done, and this is super cool, I like this about I almost said Canvas, about Google Classroom, that if we're working inside of Google Docs, I can now click right here on Turn In. And once I've done that, I say, yep, I'm ready to turn it in. Once I'm done with that, it actually says that my access as the student has expired, which means the student has turned in the work to the teacher, and therefore they can no longer make changes to the document until the teacher releases it back to the student. So let's look at what that means. Here is the teacher view. So I'm going to come back to the class, remembering I can get to that assignment from my stream, but or I could go into my classwork. So here's my classwork. It looks like I didn't organize it. I got to be better organized. So great. Railroad practice. Now I can open that up. It tells me that 1 student has turned it in. There are 0 students who have not turned it in. And now I can open my assignment and open my, so here's my student, here's ESU5, here's Nick Ziegler, right? And this is where I can give Nick, and I almost gave a 4, but that would be a bad example. So the other thing that I really want to emphasize with everybody online, this is a crazy time. Let's all remember that when we are giving any feedback, be it points that looks like grades, or be it comments, it's not so much about the grade right now. It's one, about everybody understanding we're going to make it through this, and 2, let's learn a little bit in the process, in the interim, right? And so let's be good. And I don't want to say it like negative or from like I'm looking down on people. I mean, I just want to communicate that everybody's in a similar spot. All right, so here's my student. I would see multiple students down here if I had multiple kids in my class, but remember, we only have 1 in the moment. So I'm going to open up their work. Great. And now you can see their work. I can see their work, right? I can see what they've done. Here's their AD, and down here, it looks like they gave me some more Akabaga. And now I can change the grade. I put the grade in from here. You can put it in from here, or directly inside of the document, and this is cool too, directly inside of the document, I can grade it as well as give kids a private comment, and then I can post my private comment. Notice up here it says this is not returned. Remember, over on the student view, it says my access is expired. I can't do anything with this document. So back over, they won't be able to until you return that student work, and make sure you got the right grade on there. Now I'm going to return the student work. Very good. And great. Let's look at what that looks like from the student perspective. I'm going to come back over to my classroom. And actually, you'll notice, let's go to my email, my Gmail, and you'll see that anytime teacher does something inside of my Google Classroom, I get a new email about it. And so with that in mind, think in terms of your students taking multiple classes. Their email could very quickly get a little bit overwhelming, right? If multiple folks are adding multiple things inside of their Google Classrooms. but wonderful. It says graded. My railroad practice is graded. And here it is. I got a 5 out of 5. I can open it up and it takes me right back into my Google Classroom. It shows me the private comment from my teacher, and it allows me to resubmit, which is good, because remember, we want positive vibes, right? And so let's say this kid really just did poor work. Maybe I even refuse to grade it and don't grade it, but return it to them and give them a comment, right? And say something nice and constructive, right? You got to say something nice before you say something constructive. And now the student could resubmit it if desired. When I open it back up, now I, the student, have regained access to write on my document. All right, this is an example of an assignment inside of my coursework, my class work. Good. So we have played with creating a question. We've played with creating an assignment. The material is more about, so let's say somebody asked, and I forget who, what about if I wanted to just give them a supplemental reading or a supplemental video? And I don't want them to necessarily do anything with it. That would be an example of a material, extended reading or supplemental input. And I'd add a beautiful description, and then I could add a link to it. So for example, we're talking about underground railroad. I bet there's a couple YouTube videos there. And that's a 3-minute video, and I can add it. I'm pulling my chat, and so that's a good question, Becky. I suggest we address that in a bit. So here's an example of something I could throw into or adding material. So let's say that you want to give students some choices around what materials. So I'm going to post this, and here's an example where I've got the option now. I can watch this video, or maybe I could read this thing. I think it'd be a little bit hard to communicate that inside of our classwork in terms of what are your choices. My recommendation would be, if you're trying to give students choices, watch this or read that. Maybe read your text, this section of the text, not the chapter, but the section of the text that we're talking about, or you can watch this online video. I recommend that you have that in a Google Doc, or you have that in some document that you add as a material. So I could add a piece of material that are the instructions for the week. And then I can add a document, or simply describe options. And so then I'd be able to pull that document from my Google Drive, a link, or I can upload a file from my computer as well. If I wanted to upload a file from my computer, I could do that. Good, here's a PDF, and then I post it. Let's have a quick conversation on PDFs. If we're trying to get kids to do an assignment, we talked about pulling something from your Google Drive, right? And when you pull something from your Google Drive, you're able to say, give each student a copy, their own copy of whatever this thing may be. It's my strong recommendation that you do that you create things inside of Google Drive where you can easily then have Google make a copy of the document and send it on to the students, their own document. And then that process of turning in is pretty simple. But let's say you've got this beautiful PDF that is a worksheet and you love it, and I'm not being facetious. And so this is a great worksheet and this is exactly what I want, and I don't want to take the time to put it into a Google Doc. I just don't want to do that, Nick. Now, how do I do that? So I can. It's a little bit, though, the process is a little convoluted. So watch me do it. And we have about 4 more minutes, and so that means I don't have a whole lot of time to show you how to do it. So I'm going to do it fairly quick. Remember, there's going to be a recording is going to be on, and I'll show you where in a second. So I'm going to upload a file. Here's a PDF of 500 most frequent words in Spanish. So I'm going to upload it. Great. So what are students going to do with it? You can tell it to make a copy, but it just doesn't make a copy. It doesn't make a copy of it for the kids to write on top of. Now I'm going to come over here. Here's my quick. This one's going to be ungraded. I'm going to assign it. Great. So watch with me. We've created another assignment called as. And when I come as a student back into my classroom, I can see that I just got the new assignment, and I can open. So this is what your students would do. They would open up. They would open it in a new window. So notice how many steps we're talking about right now. Then they would open it, and they could use a PDF annotator. And so one of my favorites is DocHub. Another really good one is Kami. So I'll open it up with DocHub. And now the students are able to write on top of my PDF. They can highlight what sections, they can draw on top of my PDF, and so they can do just about anything you want them to do with that worksheet. And when they're done, then they would come to share or send. And I want to get a shareable link, and they could copy this. They'd have to copy their link and now come back into their Google Classroom, and I want to add my work. Here's my link, paste my link, and I can turn it in and turn it in. So let's look at it from the teacher side. So I'm going to open up my assignment. One student's turned it in, view the assignment, and here it is. And when I open it, it will now show me that marked up PDF. So it is possible, but there were a lot of steps that we just went through to make it happen. All right, so now I want to come back, and we only have 30 seconds left. So inside of classwork, we've talked about adding an assignment. We've talked about the question, the materials, and organizing by topic. This reuse a specific post, right, we can reuse our assignments. The only thing we haven't punched yet is a quiz. So when I create a new quiz, it then creates automatically a new Google form. And but now, so I've created it inside of Google Classroom. I still have to edit my form. I have to open my blank quiz and rename it Amazing Quiz. And then I'd have a great question with a right answer and a wrong answer, remembering that we want to be really nice to kids. And then I can look at my answer key and say that this is the right answer, and done. Oops, I forgot to say that this is worth 1 point, and done. And now I'm done with it. I'm done with it. So good. I can now, excuse me for going back and forth here. I want to tell it how many points this is worth. So I'd probably want it to be the same, be consistent. And now I can assign it to my student. Great. let's look at it from the student perspective. So here's my student, and they have a new quiz that is actually amazing. And when they open it, there's this great question with a right answer and a wrong answer. When they submit it, I can see my score. And I think this is really important. It's a little discouraging if I actually have done the work to get some wrong answers. And I'm not saying that we need to be all huggy, kissy, and lovey-dovey about all this, but I just want everybody to continue to think about ensuring that we are taking into account the insecurities that exist in today's world when we create a quiz or the like. All right, we did it. We got through every one of these ideas. This is classwork. The recording will be on my website. I'm going to stop the recording now.